3, 2, 1. Well, hello again, and greetings once again from Grove City, Ohio. This is Pastor James M. Lawson, and how are you wonderful folks doing out there in this great big world? Welcome again to this new revolution, and again I have proposed and asked everybody in the whole world, join the revolution. Okay, so let's move forward. I got a lot to cover. This is now video number 8. Video number 8 of my series, Religion versus Relationship / Die Religion Die. And what I want to do in this particular video is I am going to pick up right exactly where I left off in video number 7, because I had some more that I wanted to read from my book, To Know and to Be Known in the Kingdom. And again, I just can't stress just how important my book really is and how much information I really do cover. People, please, you owe it to yourself to get a copy of my book, whether it's an ebook version, paperback version. I don't care. Contact me, order it from a store. I don't care. Just get the book, people. I cannot stress enough how important that book really is and how much information I do cover. So let us move on, because I do have a lot of reading to do. Okay, first of all, as I have mentioned in my book promo videos, I believe, at least in one of the promo videos that I've done about my book, I wrote the first edition of my book in 2006, okay, and then a couple years progressed, and during that time and in between that time, I rewrote the second edition. I wrote the second edition of my book, the more blown up, more expanded edition, where I cover a whole lot more information and a whole lot more details on things. I wrote that in 2009. So between 2006 and 2009, I learned a lot more. I expanded on my knowledge, and I wish to address that and share that with you guys here and now. Obviously, it's in my book. This is now the year 2012, so it's been a few years more. Okay. In my book, I mentioned, and I'm not going to actually read that because I'm covering it now. There are 2 really awesome books. I'm going to hold those books up with you guys and share those with you now. In my book, when I wrote my book, I did not share both of those sources. I shared one source in my book, and you can read about that source in my book. I am going to share both sources of some of the information that I have learned in between 2006 and 2009 when I have wrote my second edition. But before I do that, let me say this. Before I do that, I want to make this very much of a public statement, very much for everybody. Okay. I do not consider myself an expert on pagan religions, particularly even though I like to try to focus my ministry on reaching people into Wicca, witchcraft, and Satanism. I still don't consider myself an expert. I have learned a lot over the years. At the recording of this video, this is now October the 18th, 2012, and I'm 40 years old at the recording of this particular video. I've learned a lot over the years. I have by no means have learned it all. Okay, I still consider myself a student in trying to learn about the pagans and about the different religions, mostly in my attempt to try to understand those people, where they're coming from, and hopefully maybe reach people in that are into those religions, and reach them with the true love of the true Christ. And I'll explain that as I read my book, okay? So please don't think that I know it all, and I most definitely do not have all the answers, okay? I am simply, in my book and in these videos, I am simply covering and sharing what I have learned. I am going to reveal two of the major sources that I have learned a lot from, and I still have to continue reading in one of those books that I'm getting ready to show you next. So there's still an awful lot for me to learn, folks, okay? So bear with me. Please don't try to get into a lot of deep theological questions on pagan religions with me, because I probably just won't know the answer to all of them, okay? Bear with me. Okay, here are the two sources. I'm going to show them each individually. Source number one. This book is called The Two Babylons. The Two Babylons, the Papal worship proved to be the worship of Nimrod and his wife. Written by the late Reverend Alexander Hislop. Okay? Now, Alexander Hislop wrote this book. Let me see where I've got it at. I think the first edition that he wrote this book was in the early 1900s, and then it got revised in like 1926. I don't see where I have that highlighted in here. So 1926 was the revised edition, the second or the third revised edition of this book. Okay, this is an awesome book. The Two Babylons, the Papal worship proved to be the worship of Nimrod and his wife. Now, the only one real issue that I do not agree with Reverend Alexander Hislop on is his viewpoints of the Trinity. Reverend Hislop was more of a oneness as opposed to a triuneness in his view of the Godhead. I don't know for sure that he was apostolic, because that would have been right around the beginning of when the apostolic Pentecostal movement began. It began in like 1906. I can't confirm that he was apostolic. So he has a oneness viewpoint of the Godhead, whereas in truth and in reality there is a triune viewpoint of the Godhead, and I'm not here to go into discussions and great details on that in this video. Please don't ask. I got a lot of other videos to make. I got a lot of information to cover. It will be revealed in the future. I promise you that. I don't know when. It'll just be revealed in the future. Anyway, other than that one issue, I think that this has been an awesome book. Reverend Alexander Hislop covers a lot of great details. Okay, I'm going to set this book to the side because I might have to grab it again and refer back to that. The other book that I wanted to share. Okay, first of all, the Two Babylons book, Reverend Alexander Hislop, was written with a biblical point of view. POV, point of view. A biblical point of view. This other source that I'm getting ready to show you right now is not. Okay, here is the book. It is called The Secret Teachings of All Ages, and the author was Manly P. Hall. This book was also written in the early 1900s, and I believe that it was also revised, and it was the revised edition I think was also close to or right around the year 1926. Okay, now the huge difference between these two books is Reverend Alexander Hislop's book was written from a Christian viewpoint, or point of view, POV. Manly P. Hall, his book is written from a point of view of a Freemason point of view. So there's two entirely different people, two entirely different authors. The only real similarity that they had was that they happened to be alive and writing their books right around the same time frame, but they probably did not know each other. I don't know exactly where each of them lived, so they probably lived hundreds of miles away from each other. So in other words, they really didn't know each other. Okay, that's the bottom line is, from what I can tell and read, they did not know each other. They had no knowledge of each other at all. Okay, two different points of view. What Reverend Alexander Hislop covers on all the different mysteries, on all the different pagan religions and stuff like that, is confirmed in this book here, The Secret Teachings of All Ages. Okay, so here are two separate guys, two separate authors, wrote two separate books, and the first one was a point of view of a Christian biblical viewpoint, and the second one was a point of view of a Freemason viewpoint. Yet they both kind of work hand in hand together. This one affirms everything that Reverend Alexander Hislop wrote. Okay, it affirms it, confirms it, and you know, I've compared them, and it's amazing. Okay, let's move on. Like I said, I got a lot to cover and a lot of reading to do. Now that I have provided those two sources, those two books, and explained to you the different points of view and how they still help each other, a lot of that is what I used when I wrote the second edition of my book in 2009. So, coming from those two books, I'm going to start reading, again, I'm in the second chapter of my book. I'm still in the second chapter. I'm going to be covering a little bit of pages 59, 60, 61, and then 61, excuse me. And then some more on pages 62, 63, and a little bit on 64. I'll wrap it up and finish with that. So here it is, a continuation from where I left off at video number 7. And now that I have provided those sources, I'm just going to start reading. Okay. If all of that isn't enough, I have even more new material to unveil. I just read and learned this stuff last summer, 2008. That's what I talked about in my book, where I learned that in 2008, those two books. And it really shows just how religious the pagans really are, and how the priests also hoard their power and control over the common people. First, I will start with my views and perceptions of the whole thing. The message that God showed me that was not written in black and white, pen and ink, as I did my own study and research. Okay, as I was reading these two books, both of those two books, this is the kind of stuff that God revealed to me and showed me as I was reading, that was not written with pen and ink in these two books, but yet God was revealing it to me as I was reading. I am going to cover a few details here in this book, my book, but I will cover much greater details in my second book. Now, I've mentioned my second book in past. The second book that I'm going to write is going to be titled The True Abrahamic Covenant and the Authority of the Believer. In my research, I have found that most, and maybe even all, of the ancient religions of the world, apart from true Judaism, all derived from one source. All have similarities and roots leading back to one ancient kingdom, location, and person. They all have some form of a fake Messiah, a Redeemer of mankind, who just so happened to have been born miraculously from a virgin mother and was killed by lawless people and even resurrected from the dead. All fake mockeries of the true Christ. They even had fake forms of baptism and purification from the lusts of the fleshly desires encompassed within their worship of fire and later water. They worshipped fire and then later water. And they followed very strict, legalistic, religious principles of moralism, but most of them had a polytheistic approach and sought salvation in the gods, plural. Polytheism meaning they served and worshipped many gods, plural. Of course, the fact that many of God's very own people, the Israelite nation, directly rebelled against the true God, adopted and followed the pagan religions, and worship of idols and many gods did not help any. And the fact that many Judaic mystics adhered to the idea or doctrine that Yahweh, Yod-Hov, Vav-Hov, was a lower demiurge of some other supreme being as opposed to the true God himself, only adds to the plot of polytheism. Which is why the pagans get the whole concept of Yahweh mixed up to begin with. It's no wonder the pagans are confused when the apostatized Israelites can't even get it right. Hence, they were all wrong and confused and all followed the wrong ideas and practices of religion and God. But God always did have and still has a remnant who remain true to him in faith and his righteousness in a true, pure heart relationship with him. And I really highlighted the word heart there. So who really stole and borrowed their stories and religious practices from who? That's a good question. I want to repeat that question. Let me repeat it without reading it. Who borrowed from who? Which religions, which whatever, the pagans want to sit there and say that Christianity and Judaism borrowed from them. Everybody else wants to sit there and point out the fact that pagans borrowed from Judaism, so on and so forth. Everybody's pointing a finger and pointing the blame. So who borrowed from who? Okay? I am not going to answer that question right now. I did not answer it in this book. And I am not going to answer it in this video. As I said in my book, the answer to this question will be revealed in my second book, The True Abrahamic Covenant and the Authority of the Believer. So be ready, expecting, and anticipating its release. Here's what I'm going to share now. Here's one of the main, that's what I already covered. Okay. I already covered that about the sources of where I got my stuff. Here is a brief, not exhaustive listing of some of the ancient religions, nations, and secret societies covered in both of those two books that I showed you guys in the earlier part of the video. Mysteries of the Temple of Delphi, the Eleusinian Mysteries, Babylon, Egypt, Phoenicia, Assyria, Greece, Rome, the Medes and Persians, ancient Hindustan, modern Hinduism with a base in India, Brahmins, the pagans of Siberia, Japanese Buddhists, the Arabians, other races and regions of pagans, Iranians, various groups of American Indians, and the Mayan Indians, and the Chinese. That is a non-exhaustive list. There's probably a lot more than that covered in both of those two books that I just covered a brief little bit of them. They all have roots and derive from one source, nation, and person, and I will reveal that source and cover great detail information on that subject in my second book, so get ready for it next. Okay, I do want to cover this. One of the main points I'm emphasizing here in this book and chapter, and what I want all witches and Wiccans and Satanists and all other groups of pagans to pay very close attention to, here is the truthful fact that all of your roots, your religious roots, are deeply and highly religious. They are all steeped in religiosity and very strict, legalistic, man-made rules and regulations. Though the pagans make great claims and boast against God and the church and their rebellion, they are just as religious as the church they oppose. The roots of their religions are all alike. They all came from the same source and all serve the same fake, false God, which is an exact mimic of the true and living God whom they oppose. Please just take a deep look into what I'm saying here, and by all means do some real research into your beliefs, and you'll find what I'm telling is the truth here, okay? I gave you those two books. Do your own research. Acts 17:11, I cannot stress that enough. Research it for yourselves. There is a lot of other information all over the internet. Research it, people. Research it. I can't stress that enough. Don't just take my word for it. Research it for yourself. Search for yourselves and then make your own choice. I implore you to choose Christ and life. Join me. Join this new revolution. No pagan involved in magic, white or black, or Satanism can deny the fact that most, if not all, of your circles, your little circles, your emblems, your pentacles, and symbols use the names of God and the Hebrew names of angels, psalms, and Christian prayers to God for invocations, enchantments, and other forms of godly material in your religious ceremonies and rituals. Here's my question. How can you use God, His holy names, His holy angels' names, His symbols in your ceremonies and be in direct opposition and rebellion of Him? I just don't get it. How are you guys going to use symbols and pentacles and everything that points to and gives glory to Yahweh and covers many of the 72 Hebrew names of Yahweh, and yet be in direct opposition of Yahweh? Everything that I've seen and read so far in my own research gives glory to Yahweh, and yet you guys oppose Him. You guys oppose Him and His Son, Yeshua Messiah. I don't get it. Even, your five-pointed star, the pentagram, the upright, with the star pointing up, pentagram, as a symbol is just as Christian as it is pagan, because it represents all five elements that I spoke of in my prelude that's earlier in my book. For that matter, the cross as a symbol is just as pagan as it is Christian as well. Most of those ancient religions and secret mysteries used it as a symbol also long before Christ was hung on one. If you don't believe me, it is right here in Reverend Alexander Hislop's book about the cross, the symbol of the cross, as soon as I can find it. If I can't find it, just look it up for yourself. The cross is a very pagan symbol, and many pagan religions have used the cross in their symbols and in their worship ever since Nimrod, ever since the Tower of Babel. Okay, can't find it in this book, but it's in here. Read it for yourself, okay? Read it for yourself. I got one more thing I want to show you guys. This is just an example. One example, and I don't know what everything means on here. This is your five-pointed pentagram. Many pagans use this symbol in their worship. They also use this in direct opposition of Yahweh, which I don't understand how. Tetragrammaton, that is one of the 72 names of Yahweh. The word Yahweh, is it on here? I thought it was. Okay, it may not be on. Yes, it is. It's on here. There are names of angels on here. I mean, everything that I can see so far, and I don't know every single little symbol yet. I haven't learned what every little symbol means, but most of what I'm seeing points to Yahweh. It points to the true God. Okay? The true creator of the universe, the heavens and the universe and the earth. Okay? How in the world do you guys use symbols like that in direct opposition of God when it points to God? Okay? The five-pointed star, the four elements are, the lower elements are earth and water. The two middle elements are air and fire. Okay? The fifth one, the fifth element is called ethereal. The star that points up points to the heavens. It points to ethereal. In other words, it points to where God dwells. So that symbol is just as Christian as the cross. And the cross is just as pagan as the star, as the five-pointed star. Get a clue, folks. So I'm not just talking to pagans here, I'm talking to Christians as well. Because the Christians want to sit there and try to say that pentagram is demonic, it serves the devil. No, it points to God. It points and glorifies God. Okay? I'm done. I hope that these videos are really, really helping. I'm glad I'm able to share. Once again, as I kind of similar as I finished off in the video number 7, I implore you, I reach out to you with all of my heart. Okay, see the compassion that I am giving. If you consider yourself a pagan, I ask you to research that for yourself, especially if you're a female. I haven't covered that part of my book, but all those ancient secret societies that were in those books, none of them allowed females. Most of those pagan religions did not allow females to be initiates. They did not allow them to be in the group. And the males that they did allow to be initiates and allowed to be in those secret societies, they were very strict. They had very, very strict dogmas and morals. They had very strict legalistic man-made rules and regulations that they had to follow. And if one of the priests, Pythagoras, for example, just naming one, Pythagoras, for example, has been known to have turned down many people when he was alive during his secret mysteries. He turned down people because they didn't meet his standards. Okay, you guys sit there and want to down the church because you don't think that you meet the church's standards. And I have been making 7 videos to try to preach to the church that the church needs to stop doing all their stupid little standards anyway, their status quos, and start seeing people for what they really are, who they really are, and started loving and accepting people for who they are. You know, what's the difference? What's the difference? This is me sharing with you guys. This is me trying to reach you guys, trying to show you that the pagan religions that you say you serve, that you're a part of, and yet you sit there and oppose the church because you say that the church has man-made rules and regulations, yet you don't recognize the man-made rules and regulations that your pagan religions are, what they're about. You know, come on, people. You guys really deserve better. All pagans, witches, Wiccans, Satanists. You guys all really do deserve better. You guys all deserve to know the truth. You guys deserve to know the true love of Christ. And I hope that I can reach you. I hope that I can share with you. And I hope that I can show you what the true love of Christ really is with myself and with my ministry. Thank you all for listening. I hope these videos are helping. God bless. Bye.